Good evening and welcome to the live coverage of the 2017 gubernatorial elections for Virginia, hosted by George Mason University's Office of Student Media. My name is Erik Truong, and joined with a great panel tonight, we're excited to bring you analysis and discussion of the very important race. We also have interviews lined up throughout the broadcast so students can find out more about organizations that they can get involved in. First, let's introduce the panel.
Hi, my name is Jasmine Waterman. I'm a senior communications student from Edwards, California.
My name is Erik Truong. I'm from Portland, Oregon, and I am a WGMU radio co-host for The Spin Room. Along with my co-host Alexis, we talk about politics, pop culture, and everything in between.
My name is Alexander Shedd. I'm a junior government major from Richmond, Virginia, and I'm the assistant news editor at the Fourth Estate.
Hi, my name is Raven Royal. I'm a sophomore communications student and a reporter for Mason Cable News, which airs every Wednesday at 6:30.
Excellent. So let's start with a quick state of the race update. And starting late in the game, but as we can clearly see and addressing the elephant in the room, it seems that it is a good showing for Democrats tonight. And the poll showed the two candidates, Ralph Northam and Ed Gillespie, having within a margin of error for the polls. But as we can see here, with Northam leading by quite a margin, and also CNN, AP, NBC, and a couple more news outlets calling it for him, it's quite convincing that he will be the next governor.
Right, with about 93% of the vote in, according to CNN. Northam has 53% of the vote total. Gillespie running at about 45%, so this is definitely a close race, but definitively in Northam's favor.
We're also looking at the lieutenant governor with 92% of the vote in, Justin Fairfax at 59.1%, and Vogel in at 48.1%.
I think one thing that I really wanted to focus on during this election was, if you could pull up the graphics for counties that we were going to watch, that this metric has really been blown out of the water. And typically for counties that were generally seen, as you can see from the graphic, in the red, which was considered Trump country, and what Ed Gillespie was really hoping to harp on, such as Virginia Beach, he was not able to conquer that and lost actually to Ralph Northam by a solid 6 points. And in the purple areas, such as Loudoun, also Prince William and Henrico, he was not able to do a convincing lead. And this all really comes down to turnout, and Democrats really turned out.
Right, and if you look closely at it, you can see a lot of it is the very classic, the more rural areas voted red, everything up in the mountains, aside from the college towns. The heavy urban areas, for the most part, voted for Ralph Northam. That'd be the Fairfax, Prince William, Loudoun area, the Hampton, Norfolk area, and of course Richmond, as well as Charlottesville, Virginia, went very strong in Northam's favor.
And actually, just breaking news right now, it looks that Ed Gillespie has announced his concession and is giving his concession right now. And again, this was supposed to be in the margin of error, and we were expecting to go quite a long night and a lot more turnout for the rural areas, but it seems that Gillespie is declaring his concession to Ralph Northam and announcing his time that it is now going to be Ralph Northam to the governor's mansion. But now we want to take it quickly to exit polling that we had taken at Merton Hall earlier today, so let's pull that up.
So what we want to start with is voting by candidate. As our results state from Merton Hall, 90% of people voted for Ralph Northam, and I think that's very interesting considering our demographic here. We are a blue campus. So the next one we want to look at is voting by age, 18 to 19. That age bracket was 47%, the largest number, and I think that is very comparative to our freshman population on campus. For most of them, this might be their first election that they've ever voted in, so it's huge that we got a good amount of turnout from them. We also want to talk about voting by gender. 56.33% of voters in this election at our precinct, Merton Hall, were female. And our last exit polling result that we do want to talk about is voting by issue. 25% of voters voted based on civil rights. So what are some interesting pieces of this data that you guys think stand out most to you?
I think the data really, for me, was the very, very emphasis on Northam. And it was expected that it might have been more turmoil, especially, I don't know if you guys have heard with the DNC, and it wasn't that big of an issue that Democrats really turned out for this election.
Right. The surprising point for me in the exit polls from campus, particularly the issues poll. Of course, civil rights is a pretty obvious choice for a college campus, but I was surprised that higher education is down at 4th or 5th, even 6th place.
Right.
Personally, that was the one I selected. I care a lot about the state of my student loans. I thought that would be a little bit higher up there, but as you can see, it's about 11%.
Right.
Yeah, I have to agree with education because, you know, all of us are in our early 20s, and it's like very important for people to realize, you know, what's the next step after.
So now what we're going to try to do is bring up Merton Hall, which we were able to get about 300 correspondents or 300 respondents today for our poll. So if we could bring that up now.
It's a rainy day in Fairfax, but that does not stop the students from voting for who will take the governor's mansion. Students are lining up at this polling precinct in Merton Hall. I had the chance to speak to a couple of them, asking them who they voted for and why.
We voted for Ralph
Northam. I voted for Ed Gillespie, Jill Vogel, and John Adams.
Ralph Northam.
I voted for Cliff Hyra.
I don't agree with Trump, so I know if I vote for Democrats, it'll, you know, put a stop to doing whatever he wants.
Ralph was just like the common sense pick for us.
Exactly. For me, it's a lot of things. Education is a big thing, making college more affordable, and Ralph, healthcare also.
I think their economic policies are the most pertinent issues in this election.
Normally I would say environment, because the Republican policy is, of course, poison the water supply, warm the earth, and burn every fossil fuel until there is no carbon left in the earth's crust. But I said national security.
Well, when choosing any of the people that I voted for, I just looked at their scandals online, what, you know, they have done, like, that's caught attention. And when I looked up Cliff, he really didn't have any.
Gun control, given recent events and several events.
Yeah, I feel like gun control is a big factor that many people think about when voting.
Looking at a very important issue now is what Trump has actually done during this election. So if you could give us the tweet that Trump actually said right now.
Yes, so Donald Trump tweeted, Ed Gillespie worked hard but did not embrace me or what I stand for. Don't forget Republicans won 4 out of 4 House seats, and with the economy doing record numbers, we will continue to win, even bigger than before. And he tweeted that not too long ago, so I just wanted to know, what are your thoughts on that?
I believe this is very par for the course for President Trump. Is pretty much completely expected, in my opinion, after what happened in Alabama with Luther Strange. He did the exact same thing. Was very supportive of him on Twitter just a few weeks before. Gillespie in particular, we actually printed an article for the State about the tweets that he had in support of Ed Gillespie, and they were very favorable, very optimistic, and now we've got this complete 180 when he loses the election. I'm not surprised about it at all.
I think it's just very interesting how quick he was to distance himself. It was just very fast. I mean, we can expect him to be quick on Twitter, but it was very fast after these election results, and it's very interesting to see the flip, like you said. I agree.
It's interesting to see how quick he is to flip again, that you said that he might go 100% for a person, but still disavow them once they do not win that seat. And this has happened, as you said before. He tries his best, and he's done quite a few robocalls for Ed Gillespie, and Gillespie really hasn't retweeted any of Trump's tweets endorsing him or tying MS-13 to Ralph Northam also, which was a huge part of this campaign. But it's really interesting to see how quickly Trump, who is the party leader essentially, and disavow the Republican candidate for governor in Virginia.
Yeah, I do find it a little bit interesting, the decision to disown Ed Gillespie instead of criticizing Northam. That was a big part of the tweets that he had for Gillespie a couple weeks ago, were at the same time saying that Northam would be bad at the job. We didn't see any of that in his reply to the election tonight.
Do you think this will be kind of an ongoing thing with other elections going on, and even leading into like the 2018 year where it's going to be a huge election? Do you think that Trump will start doing that as well?
I would certainly count on it, yeah.
I agree. I think so as well, especially we can see how quick he was as the results of this election, so I think we can definitely expect to see it in larger elections across the country as well.
I think the issue that the Republican Party really is battling with right now is whether to support themselves with Trump and line themselves with Trump or go against Trump. And as we can see from the Senate right now, that they are trying to tie themselves against him, but also ones that will tie 100% with him. So it's really hard to find that fine line to get both the voters and both get the leadership support.
Right, and it is also an interesting dichotomy just from Trump as a political entity. He's supporting these candidates like Ed Gillespie and Luther Strange, who are thought of as very classical mainstream Republicans, which isn't the alignment that he put himself in during the election during this year. If he were staying true to the philosophy that he's been preaching for the last year and a half, he'd be supporting candidates like the candidate who beat out Luther Strange in Alabama, Roy Moore, and also like those kind of populist firebrand conservatives who are newer to politics. Those are kind of the brand that Trump created, so to speak, that he really brought to the surface of America, and I'm really surprised to not see him jump on those.
Okay, excellent. And after this, we'll be right back after this commercial.
Justin Fairfax and how he's just become the second African American to hold statewide office in Virginia. That is huge, you guys. How do we feel about that?
It has been a historic race and has been very historic for Virginia as an election in general. Now, with the second, sorry, can you say that one more time?
The second African American to hold statewide office in Virginia.
Which is incredible that it is only the second. But it is historic for Justin Fairfax as the next lieutenant governor, and also Danica Roem, who won a seat against a 25-year incumbent for the House of Delegates, and now will be the first transgender in the House of Delegates.
That is, I mean, that's huge for civil rights, not just in Virginia, but really across the country.
And I think that it's important that we're starting to see people realizing that they have a voice and they're starting to be active, and just seeing that it's the second and now we can move away from the second, just keep on going. That way we can have a representation of what America looks like.
I agree, although he's only the second, but we can see with the first transgender that it's more progressive. We're moving towards better things, and as far as being more diverse, I think that's a huge factor, especially in some southern states, and I think that's really great that we are moving forward.
I am fairly surprised that out of the 6 candidates running for statewide office, governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general, that there was only 1 female running and 1 African American, and that really struck me.
Right, and it also goes back to our exit polling data with that 56%. Only 1 woman is on the ballot, and we still see women turning out more. So I think that's also very surprising, just to see that female turnout is up.
Right, and female turnout is fairly higher, especially in off-year elections. And as we can see from the data last year, it was, again, females vote more in these elections.
I agree.
One thing that we do want to talk about from the last discussion is the primary race, as we mentioned, with Corey Stewart. And Corey Stewart had a very close race, one that we were not expecting to be as close with Ed Gillespie for the Republican governorship.
Right. Yeah. No. I mean, the Corey Stewart versus Ed Gillespie race back in the primaries was really huge. I mean, most of the polls had Corey Stewart very far behind Gillespie the entire season, and then he jumped up about 20 points on election night, and I believe it was 48-52 was the final result. And Corey Stewart, of course, is from the Prince William County Board of Supervisors, and I think we're going to be seeing more of him in the Senate race next year.
Okay, excellent. Actually going to send it to our correspondent, Jasmine Jaramillo, who is at the Hub Ballroom where Northam is having a watch party. Jasmine, how's it going up there?
So, as you see, the energy here is really great. We just had Congressman Jerry Connolly was on, and now from the 4th Congressional District, Congressman on right now. The room is generally extremely excited right now, Chloe, as we have a full sleep. Very loud in the back. All right. So we wanted to. So we have a few students here that we wanted to talk to you real quick. So we have Tanasha, Tasia, sorry, and Ashley. Hi. So how are you guys feeling about everything right now?
Very excited. The energy is crazy. I'm just Yeah, I'm really excited. The results are pouring in. happening, so I'm really excited.
Right. Did you guys vote in this district?
Yes. No, I voted in the Loudoun County district.
Okay, great. Which exact district is that? Has results come in for your district yet?
No, I haven't seen any of the results.
Okay.
It was like voting on certain school issues and school policies, as well as voting on all the tickets.
Okay. Great. Well, obviously, you guys are excited for the results. So, like, how do you feel about the party? Like, as the results coming in.
I was excited, definitely, just for like what they stood for, especially like women's rights, and, like tuition going down, especially as a full-time student. That's a big thing. And about the focus on education, women's rights, just all around affordable health care. So it's been really good.
I'm happy you guys are enjoying everything. It's obviously been a great night here. So, thank you. All right.
Welcome back. We are here with Aria Galvan, PR Chair for Mason Dreamers. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you for having me, of course.
Yeah, Ari, it's great to have you here. So for a lot of the viewers out there, they might not know who the Mason Dreamers are or what exactly your organization does. So if you could just go into a little bit of detail about the cause and the goals of your organization.
Sure. So at Mason Dreamers, we're an organization on campus. We create a more inclusive environment for undocumented students. That's through advocacy and education. We host events on campus and off campus because we know that there's a large undocumented community outside of campus. So we do both events outside and on campus.
Now, last Wednesday, you guys held a student walkout for immigrants' rights in North Plaza at 11:11 a.m. Could you tell us the significance of that event to your organization and why it was so important for you guys to hold that event?
Of course. So the walkout was at 11:11 because we wanted to emphasize the 11 billion undocumented folks that live in the country and that are kind of in a shadow, and we don't really think about, we think about dreamers and we just think about students. We don't think about the original dreamers, which was, they were our parents. They were the ones who had this big dream to bring their sons and daughters to the United States to get higher education, just a better life in general. So the 11 billion undocumented folks, that's who we wanted to really emphasize this walkout on. We had 11 chairs. Each chair had a different story representing some of the struggles that you can see undocumented folks go through. There was one specifically, her name was Rosa Maria, and she was a 10-year-old in El Paso, Texas, who was actually in the ambulance on the way to get surgery, and the ambulance was stopped by Border Patrol, and she was undocumented. So Border Patrol followed her to the emergency room, waited until she got her surgery. After surgery, took her into custody in a correctional facility, and it's like, or a deportation facility, I'm sorry, and it's, how do you know, we live in a country where I think we're losing the sense of humanity for undocumented folks, so we really wanted to emphasize that.
Lieutenant Governor Northam has the more liberal policies on immigration and the Dreamers Act. Could you talk a little bit about how a Northam governorship might affect your organization?
Yeah, it's a huge one for us. I think that he believes in a lot of the things that Mason Dreamers believes in. For example, having someone that believes in those same things, like, you know, immigration rights, would mean, for example, in-state tuition for undocumented folks. It could mean driver license for undocumented folks, because driver licenses are not given here for those that don't have documents in the state of Virginia. So it's a really, really huge one, and we're super excited that he is in office now.
Now, Aria, last question. How can students get involved in your organization or reach out to you?
They can follow us on Instagram. It's at Mason Dreamers. On Facebook, at Mason Dreamers. They can send us an email, masondreamers@gmu.edu. They can just approach one of us. We are super approachable, and I think that is our mission, you know, to try to make a more inclusive environment for the students here.
Aria, thank you so much for being with us tonight. We really enjoyed you. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
Welcome back. back. It has just been announced that Mark Herring will win the Attorney General seat for Virginia, which makes this a 3-for-3 sweep for the Democrats for the Virginia state leadership.
And now we'd like to go to our next interviewee. It's Aiden Semenko. He is the president of Roosevelt at Mason. Aiden, nice to have you here. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So can you tell us a bit more about Roosevelt at Mason in general?
Yeah, Roosevelt at Mason is a think tank on campus. We pride ourselves as being the nation's largest undergraduate-led think tank. We're part of a network of 140 other chapters, and we also pride ourselves on being one of the biggest and best chapters within that network.
Excellent. So there is one event that is a very big standout for your organization that we want to talk about, which is the Jeffersonian Dinner. And it is actually happening in less than a month, in December 2nd at 8 p.m. So can you tell us a bit more about this event?
Yeah, the Jeffersonian Dinner is something we came up with just a few years ago. This will be the third Jeffersonian Dinner we've had. It's a time for students from organizations all across campus to come together and talk about a question, whether that question be how do we colonize space or anything of that kind of sort. And we just sit down, we eat some carrabas, and we talk about this question within a table, and then outside of that we talk about it with everyone else and see what every other table talked about as well. And this year we're really excited to see what the question is going to be, and we're going to host it with 12 other organizations as well.
Oh, wow.
So I saw you've been involved in Roosevelt at Mason since you were a freshman, and now you've been here for a few years. So being a senior, how do you think Roosevelt at Mason has evolved since you've been here?
Yeah, Roosevelt at Mason's definitely evolved a lot since I was a freshman. When Roosevelt started, it was just a couple of people in a dorm room, and now it's up to 60 people a week coming to our weekly meetings. When I was a freshman, it was pretty new. And we were able to get a lot of things done, and then as we gained a membership we were able to go down to Richmond and lobby on behalf of students. We're going to do that again this year. That'll be our third time doing that as well. So since I was a freshman we've grown a lot, and it's been really exciting to see, and I hope to see it grow even more in the future as an alumni.
So what does the organization really hope to strive for, and are you looking for a certain political affiliation for the students?
We are a nonpartisan organization on campus. We accept students from all political backgrounds. But beyond that, our biggest goal is just to raise students' voices in all levels of government, whether that be at a local level, here on campus, statewide, nationwide as well. We just hope to see that students become active players within government and really get involved in the policy writing, policy implementation, and issue awareness advocacy on campus.
And ways for other students to get involved, where are ways that they can reach you?
Yeah, we have a website, Roosevelt at Mason, AT spelled out. Also, we have a Facebook page. You can just look us up, Roosevelt at Mason, and a Twitter as well. And our Twitter is cycled between our general body members week to week, so it's always new and exciting as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us. We had a pleasure talking to you, but we'll be right back after this commercial break.
It's been a crazy night. It's been amazing. And as you can see, we've had the Lieutenant Governor, Justin Fairfax has won, Mark Herring, the Attorney General, also has been called. And even in New Jersey, they called it really early this evening. Murphy won by 51%, and that was early on.
We also have Utah elections to look forward to, and also the New York mayor elections. But again, it seems like with the Gillespie campaign going down in the headquarters, that many of the Gillespie folks are starting to blame Trump. And this is probably occurrence that we'll start seeing more and more often with defections from Trump. So it will be very interesting to see.
All right, and we're back. So it's been a very eventful night for Virginia. And we'd like to talk a little bit about what happened with this election season, kind of where it started and where it went. Obviously, we had four major candidates last spring in the primary season. On the Democratic side, there was Ralph Northam, of course, and Tom Perriello, a progressive dark horse candidate who kind of came in late in the season. A lot of people compared him to Bernie Sanders. They had kind of the same policies, the same progressive platform. Conversely, there was Corey Stewart on the Republican side running against Ed Gillespie, and again, another big populist, but obviously in a different way. And in my opinion, these are the kind of candidates, these big populists, more farther leaning on either side, that we're going to see a lot more of in the future. Obviously, they can't really break through those barriers right now, but Corey Stewart obviously is running against Tim Kaine next year for his Senate seat. And there's a lot of talk of bigger progressives like Tom Perriello on a national level.
Well, I think it's interesting if we go back to what you were talking about with Tom Perriello and Bernie Sanders. I mean, even last semester, Bernie Sanders came here to endorse Tom Perriello, and he talked about raising the minimum wage on a very personal level, you know, telling stories. And I think it's always very interesting when you see big candidates like we saw Bernie Sanders in the general election endorse, you know, a different candidate. And I think it's also very interesting that you brought up, you know, how similar they are in some of their progressive views. So I think it's interesting to look at comparisons between two candidates.
First, I think George Mason University does an incredible job of bringing these guests and bringing them all so then students can see and hear and really listen to all the deliberation and talk through it. But I think that many of us were expecting the Northam and Perriello race to be much closer, but it was decisive very early on. But the Stewart and Gillespie campaign, it went quite much longer than we thought it would. And I think we can really see where a lot of the primary ideals that the opponents had, such as Perriello and Stewart, really resonated and was brought into the general election, especially during Confederate monuments and many other issues that were brought now.
Right, of course, Northam picked up a lot of Perriello's talking points on the campaign trail, stuff like raising the minimum wage wasn't a big item on Northam's docket until Perriello made a very big deal out of it. Focusing more on student loan relief and health care, for example, was much bigger on Perriello's side until Northam jumped in. And then, I mean, Corey Stewart, he was just really off in a completely different world from Gillespie. I mean, he was really promoting the kind of firebrand conservatism that Donald Trump made popular recently, very hardline against immigration, very populist, stuff like that. So it's a very interesting dichotomy that's forming in those parties.
And I think that's something that we really have to watch coming into the next year. But again, we'll take it back to a quick commercial break. We have a great interview now with Davide Genoese-Zerbi, who is the Chair of Government and Community Relations for Student Government. So welcome, Davide. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and good job with the name.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So can you tell us what student government is at Mason and what it hopes to accomplish?
So student government has three main branches. There's the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the EDC, which is kind of like our judicial branch. And we essentially work on whatever initiatives we see as, you know, important to the student body, stuff like meal plans, housing policies, and anything else that we think is important and that we choose to work on.
That's great. So Gold Rush is coming this Friday, November 10th. Can you give us any hints about what's to come for one of Mason's biggest events of the semester?
We actually have a lot of really exciting things coming for Gold Rush. One thing that we hear from the student body a lot is that they want more tailgates. And, you know, that's something that we're always continually working on. And so this year we're actually making Gold Rush a little bit more similar to a tailgate. And so rather than it occurring in North Plaza, it's going to be occurring in Lot K, starting at 4:30, and there is going to be a pavilion serving beer to those who are 21 or over. And so it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to hand out T-shirts, as we always do, and we're going to hopefully win the first basketball game of the season.
Excellent, and this is coinciding right with Family Weekend, so hopefully we'll get a great turnout for Mason's Gold Rush. But another big event that Mason Student Government hosts is Mason Lobbies. And so can you tell us more about what this event is and when it'll be?
Yeah, so Mason Lobbies this year will be January 31st, which will be next semester, about a week into classes. And essentially what we do is we go down to Richmond and we talk to the state legislature, we talk to our representatives about primarily just state funding. We point out the fact that George Mason University has kind of complied with all of the requests that the state has made. The state has requested all state universities to grow. George Mason was the only one who did. And at the same time, we get far less funding per student than any other state university in the Commonwealth. And so what we really try to do is try to lobby the state government to try to get more equitable tuition levels for the student body to help ease the stress of tuition on the student body. And I would also like to point out that Mason Lobbies is not just a student government event. It is an event sponsored and planned by student government, but any student can participate. And so if you are interested in getting involved, we're going to have some promotional material going out, and I would encourage you to sign up and to be able to go to Richmond and tell your story about tuition, the importance of those state finances.
So speaking about accomplishments here, what has student government accomplished so far, and what is yet to come for the rest of the year?
So student government has a lot of different accomplishments that we are very proud of. Things move rather slowly in really any government, and student government is no exception. We work with the administration to change many things. If you look on the backs of your student IDs, there are some emergency contact numbers. That was a student government initiative that was implemented, I think, about 2 years ago. Just this past year, an initiative that student government was working on for 2 years to get pepper spray allowed in the dorm rooms as a sexual assault prevention, to allow people the tools to defend themselves. That is a policy change that was implemented just this past year, and students can now carry pepper spray in their dorm rooms. And way back, like maybe 20 years or so ago, I'm not quite sure, student government actually worked on changing the university's policy to allow for a medical amnesty. Medical amnesty, for those of you who don't know, is the policy where, like, say you and your friends are drinking and you're underage and one of your friends gets alcohol poisoning. If you call for help, if you call the police or call an ambulance, none of you will get in trouble with student conduct, and that's to encourage people to seek help rather than to hide and risk something bad happening. And so student government has a lot of different initiatives, some big, some small, that we are working on, that we hope to continue working on. We're trying to work with the library to get access to the library 24 hours during final week. Sometimes they do it, sometimes they don't. We're trying to get them to do it more consistently. One senator is working to get African American studies to count to count for the history general education requirement in the school. So we have a lot of different things that we're working on all over the place. I personally hope to work with the Board of Supervisors of Fairfax County to get a crosswalk light for the crosswalk across Roberts Road. So I mean, we do a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of stuff we're hoping to accomplish.
So as you said, there's a lot that Mason student government is planning to do, and for sure getting ready to gear up and get ready to do. So what is the best way for students to reach to Mason student government?
Yeah, so we in student government, we always love to hear input from the student body. You'd be surprised how excited we get when we get an email from the student body. And what I would recommend, if you want to get in touch with student government, I would recommend that you go to our website. I believe it's sg.gmu.edu. If I'm wrong about that, you can just Google GMUSG, you'll find it. And just look for really anybody in student government. All of our emails should be up on the website. And just email anybody, and with your concern, with your complaint, and we'll try to get you in touch with the right person and help you out that way. The other way, obviously, is to tweet us at Mason Student Gov, G-O-V, no period. And you can also like us on Facebook. That's at Mason Student Gov again. So,
Davide, thank you so much for being with us tonight. We'll be right back after this commercial break with the rest of our panelists for conclusion and discussion. Welcome back. So tonight we spoke a lot about what happened in 2016, early in 2017, what's happening in the present, but we also want to talk about what is to come, 2018. What do you guys think is to come for next year?
One thing to mention first is that Democrats are having a great night for the House of Delegates, which are all up for election, all 100. And all they needed was 17 seats to take back the legislature, and it was seeming like a very daunting task in the beginning. But now they have picked up a net of 13 seats already, and there are still 7 too close to call, and this was seeming very unlikely, but a huge wave of Democrat fervor, likely against Trump and his policies, is really shaking up in Virginia.
And I think one of the most important things that we've seen in this election, as you said, it's been a great turnout, that people are realizing that their vote does matter. It's really important to go out and vote for your local politics, your state politics, national politics. It's not just at the big wheel. You have to go out to every election. So I was really happy to see a lot of turnout for this one.
Right, I mean, this has been a really huge night for the Democrats. I'm not sure if anybody really expected such a sweeping amount of wins. Obviously, Tim Kaine has already announced that he'll be seeking re-election for his Senate seat next year in 2018. Not that many Republican opposers so far. Corey Stewart has announced his intentions to run against Senator Kaine. And based on how he did in the primaries, I'm sure he'll probably pull in some good numbers. Other names that have been tossed around are Carly Fiorina, who obviously was a contender in the Republican presidential primary. Dave Bratt, who's a very popular congressman back in Central Virginia, where I'm from. It'll be interesting to see where it goes, but I think just based on tonight, Tim Kaine's chances at re-election look very good.
But also, after the loss of Gillespie, the Republicans, especially in Virginia, really have to examine where they want to go with this party and how to best confront Tim Kaine.
I think it will also be interesting to see what our new electors do next year, you know, as far as implementing things that they have talked about along their campaigns. You know, will they hold everyone's expectations? Will they meet them, and will they surpass them?
Right, because just as you said, it doesn't stop once they get elected. They have to put in the work, and I'm sure everybody is ready to see these people who we've elected put in the work and do right by Virginia.
Yeah, Northam's talked about, he's talked some pretty big game on the campaign trail. He's talked about raising the minimum wage to, I think it was $11, protecting the Dreamers Act, undocumented immigrants, ensuring fair health care for all of Virginia. It will be interesting to see if he can get those accomplishments through in his single term under a Trump presidency.
Absolutely, and we'll be sure to keep an eye out for that. But again, we want to send a special thank you to all those watching, and a special thank you to Mason Cable Network, the Office of Student Media, and also our great 3 interviews with Mason Dreamers, Roosevelt at Mason, and Mason Student Government. We also want to thank our faculty advisors, Jason Hartzell, David Carroll, and Catherine Mingus, and also everyone who helped organize this coverage. We truly enjoyed being here with you tonight, and we hope to see you again next year for the 2018 midterm elections. But until then, we hope you have a great night, and we'll see you next year.